My name is Flo Rice. I was shot in the Santa Fe High School mass shooting on May 18th, 2018. 10 lives were lost, including 8 children and 2 substitute teachers. 13 others were injured. Let me preface by saying I had worked as a substitute at the high school for 4 years. During this time, substitutes did not have keys to lock a classroom door, even though we repeatedly asked. After Parkland, I would sit in my classroom and look around at the furniture to determine if I had some big pieces to barricade my door, because that's all I had to protect kids. I couldn't lock a door. We didn't have active shooter training. There were multiple classrooms that did not have working landlines and no cell reception. There was a student who dressed in a black trench coat with swastikas, carried a duffel bag, just like the Columbine killers. He wore this every day, all year long, no matter what the weather. And this red flag was never questioned. This student's father did not secure his shotgun or his handgun. And Lucky Gunner sold this underage student ammunition without verifying an ID. All of these things contributed to the massacre. The beginning of that fateful morning, I chatted in the hall with 2 other substitutes, Ann Perkins and Cynthia Tisdale, about the classes we had that day. Ann and I had basketball classes in the gym, and Cynthia had art. When the bell rang that morning, the shooter, in his Columbine uniform, wearing a shirt that said "Born to Kill," walked in the front door of the school. And he actually started to turn around and leave, but the assistant principal stopped him and said, "The bell already rang, get to class." He had a shotgun and a handgun in his trench coat. Ammunition and homemade bombs were in his duffel bag. About 15 minutes into class, a fire alarm went off. Ann and I both questioned this because we knew there had been a fire alarm last week, a fire drill. What we were unaware of was that another substitute teacher had saw the student in the hall with a shotgun. And he tried to call, but the phone didn't work in his classroom. He couldn't call 911, and there was no cell reception. So he had no choice but to pull the fire alarm for help. So Ann and I in our class headed down the hall to the closest exit, directly in the path of the shooter. I remember looking down the hall at Ann ahead of time with her class. The hallway was lined with windows to the exit door. Suddenly, I was engulfed by the most deafening sound I had ever heard in my life. I felt the reverberation through my entire body, and there was a flash of light, and I felt like I was blinded. And I immediately thought, this is a bomb. There's a bomb going off, and I knew the exit door was steps in front of me and just to keep going. And then I felt it again. I heard the deafening sound, and I felt myself falling as if in slow motion. And I hit the ground face down, and suddenly there was just silence, just silence. I looked up and saw my friend Ann Perkins laying across the sidewalk a few feet ahead of me. She was facing away. I couldn't see her face. I was confused. And I tried to sit up, but I couldn't move my legs. And I looked and realized my left leg was twisted and broken. And then I realized, I looked at my legs and saw there were bloody bullet holes in my legs. It was not a bomb. I had been shot. Then the realization hit me that someone was hunting me like an animal, and the immense, gripping fear was all consuming. I was in the doorway, and he had to be just a few feet away from me and probably was going to be coming through that doorway and shoot me again. And even in that moment, I had no idea of the horror that was on the other side of the wall from me in the art rooms. They were trapped by the shooter, locked in a closet. Their friends were bleeding out and already dead. Their phones were ringing with frantic calls from parents. And the shooter taunted them and said, "Your mommy's calling." And another one bites the dust in between shots. Cynthia and 8 students were already dead. Somehow, I could still reach my purse and grab my cell phone. I drug myself out of the doorway somehow, and I laid down on my phone very still so that the shooter would think I was dead. And I called my husband. I don't know why I didn't call 911, but I called my husband, and I don't think I would have survived had I had to wait for 911. I heard gunfire through the shattered window that I was laying under. I now know that our valiant school resource officers ran in when they saw me shot and were engaging the shooter. And I heard the shattered glass falling around me. And every time I heard the glass falling, I thought it was because the shooter was pointing his gun through the window and was going to finish me off and shoot me again. I heard the sound of a police officer run by me, and on his radio, the voice said, "We do not have eyes on the shooter." So I was still afraid to move or open my eyes, but kept trying to call my husband and then would hang up quickly. I could even smell the gunfire. And then the pain in my legs began to get unbearable. I had 6 bullets go through my hips and thighs, and one was still lodged in my femur. Finally, I heard the distinctive sound of my husband's car. He had found me. I heard him yelling at someone saying, "That's my wife." And I heard him yell, "She's alive. She's on the phone with me." Someone touched my shoulder, and it was Officer Banda, a school resource officer. He told me to put my arms around his neck, and he picked me up and ran with me and put me in our car. And I owe this heroic officer my life because I was bleeding out. Our daughter was a senior that year. She didn't have to be at school until later that morning, thank God. But my husband, not knowing what was going on, when he ran to the car, he took her with him that day. So she drove up there with him, and she saw her mother shot and bleeding. And she held my hand and prayed for me in our car as we sped to the hospital. It was like we were on a one-way street with all the first responders from every organization flying down the road towards us. I am grateful I survived. Other families have been devastated by loss that day. The students that did survive have lost their innocence, and their lives will never, ever be the same because they live with PTSD every day. We need safe storage mandates for parents of minors. Parents should be held accountable by a felony if their child gets their gun and injures or shoots someone with it. Minors should not be able to buy ammunition, and our schools need to be hardened. Our children need to be safe at school and come home alive. These are the 10 that did not come home on May 18th. Cynthia Tisdale, Ann Perkins, Jared Black, Shayna Fisher, Kristen Garcia, Kyle McLeod, Angelique Ramirez, Sabika Sheikh, Christopher Stone, and Kimberly Vaughn. Thank you.